Over the last 14 years, Ninjago has crafted this amazing world that has so many details, so many aspects to it, but unfortunately, nothing can be 100% correct. Writers forget, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, and the Ninjago writers do their best to try and maintain the world that we know, but the thing is, ultimately, there will always be plot holes. And you guys really enjoyed the video that I made about this subject already, and if you haven't watched it, please do. But the thing is that you guys asked for me to talk about more of them, and that is what I'm going to do in this video. And if there is any I haven't mentioned so far between this and the last one, please let me know, because if there are more, I will definitely continue to make them. But yes, welcome to me attempting to fix even more Ninjago plot holes, and there are some in here that a lot of people have wondered, and I do think I have some very valid explanations for them. But let me not waste any more of your time, and let's talk about some plot holes. The first one comes from the existence of Traveler's Tea, and the thing is that we have been given certain rules when it comes to it, but those rules have also been broken. We know that Traveler's Tea does have some restrictions. We know that it can't really access the Nether Realm and vice versa because the Nether Realm actually has its own version of Traveler's Tea, and we also know that there are other realms it shouldn't be able to access, particularly the Departed Realm. The main way we know this is because the Realm Crystal, the more powerful variant essentially of Traveler's Tea, is also not able to discover the Departed Realm, and in my opinion, a crystal that is used as a more powerful variant should be able to do more than the actual tea itself. But in Season 11, the Kaiju Protocol, we do actually see Wu and Pixel opening up the Departed Realm. And, well, fun fact, did you know that the Departed Realm in this episode is just a recolored version of the Nether Realm? I didn't realize that until now, but there is that. But the point is, by all accounts, Wu should not have been able to use Traveler's Tea to open up the Departed Realm in that fashion. I mean, the only way we've seen the Departed Realm open up until now is actually the Oni masks. And of course, that requires a whole ritual, that requires a whole load of sacrifices, it's a whole thing. So the fact that Tea was able to do it in this instance is definitely an interesting plot hole. So how do you open up the realm in this fashion? And I do think there is a very subtle explanation for this plot hole, and I do think it has to do with Wu's knowledge of the actual realms and of Traveler's Tea in of itself. Of course, Mustake is the main person who was providing Traveler's Tea in Ninjago, and in the Kaiju Protocol, it is noted that they no longer have Traveler's Tea because they used the rest of it. So Wu clearly had a knowledge on it, even though he didn't have a knowledge on how to actually make it. But I do think Wu, and the reason for this, is the fact he was able to alter the use of Traveler's Tea. Because, of course, Wu has his own unique way. In the Kaiju Protocol as well specifically, Wu actually does utilize Traveler's Tea differently. In this episode, he uses it in an actual teapot, and he waves the steam, which is different to how he did use it before. And the point is that he did somewhat understand what he was doing. He obviously was opening up the wrong realms, and he does note that, but the point is that he knew for a fact that he did have to open a realm that was definitely difficult to get to. So what if Wu does have an active knowledge on how to modify Traveler's Tea to be able to get to realms that are not actually known? Wu is known for having different kind of potions, different elixirs. I mean, in March of the Oni the season before, he notes that he used a healing potion on Faith. So Wu clearly has some sort of mystical knowledge, and how do we know he's not applying that to Traveler's Tea? The other way we can determine that is that even though he knew the Traveler's Tea wouldn't be able to get him to and from the Nether Realm, the fact is that he was still taking Traveler's Tea with him to the realm itself. So why would he be taking it if it was never going to work to begin with? In my opinion, it's because he was going to modify it. Wu still had to take that tea for a very specific reason. He of course thought he was actually going to the realm in of itself, and the fact is that he clearly understood what he was doing, and as soon as he realized that the ninja were taking it in its raw form, he then started to panic, almost as if he knew the Traveler's Tea in that current state wouldn't have worked. But the fact is that he was still taking it, so how do we know he didn't know how to use it in a different way? And that, in my opinion, can explain how he was getting to different realms. What if he had some sort of knowledge to do with it to be able to access it? And because of that modification, however he may be doing it, it is giving him an extra ability similar or more powerful than the actual realm crystal. But that is my explanation for this plot hole, and let me know what you think, because I do think it clearly has something to do with Wu's knowledge, because Wu's the only person who was ever able to actually do it, and he clearly has something that we don't know. The second plot hole in question is to do with the power source of Zayn himself, and I have actually commented on Zayn's power source before. I actually commented on it in one of my theory videos, but the thing is, I actually have a newer explanation that I am more fond of. Of course, the whole thing is that Season 3 comments on the idea of what actually was powering Zayn. It was a big question. Of course, Pixel also uses half of that power source, and in the end, we never actually get a direct explanation, because at the end, once he has sacrificed himself, Kai just comments that the thing that powered Zayn was Brotherhood. And even though I like that explanation, I want to know what that thing in his chest was. And before, I said it was a condensed, crystallized variant of ice, and to an extent, I do still like that explanation, but I have thought of something that may potentially be better than that. Because by all accounts, this is another plot hole. It's set up to figure out what powers Zayn, and also in the end, we never actually find out. And to this day, we still don't know. But I actually think it's Chrono Steel, with ice. Because the one thing is that visually speaking, it does look very similar to the Time Blades in of themselves, of course being a piece of metal with the elemental colour completely encompassing it, and of course that is exactly what Zayn's power source is. We also know that the Elemental Alliance did have access to Chrono Steel, because of course Rei and Maya create the Time Blades to take the power of time away from the Time Twins. So it's not exactly like they didn't have access to the metal, and it wasn't exactly a lot of metal to begin with. The other thing that supports this is that when Dr. Julian meets Wu, he remarks that the Elemental Master of Ice of course came along and took fascination with their son, almost like he knew that Zayn was there, and he said that Winter followed him. But the thing is that Winter never actually left, almost as if the elemental power was obviously still there. This is also the last canonical instance of the Master of Ice. The thing is that after this fact, Zayn of course has the power and the Ice Emperor doesn't. So he had to pass the elemental power in some way. And of course, like we know, Chrono Steel does have that ability. So what if that power source is Chrono Steel? It makes sense honestly, and it does give a viable explanation as to also why Ice could only be achieved once Pixel and Zayn combined after Zayn gave half of the power source. He split the power of Ice in half, so he can't use the full ability unless with her, almost like the power was absorbed into one piece and that piece was officially fractured. Again, let me know what you think of this, because in my opinion, Chrono Steel is a very valid explanation for this, and you can track down how the Master of Ice would have gotten it, how the powers would have been transferred because of it, and the ability and the behavior of the power once Zayn split it in two. Honestly, again, I really like this one, so let me know what you think. Plot hole 3 is almost an extension on the first video, because in the first one I did talk about the implication of the golden weapons, but the one thing I never mentioned was the implications of the mega weapon, and how it was actually used in Season 2, and honestly, how it doesn't really make much sense. Of course, we know that as time went along and as Garmadon used the Mega Weapon, he of course used it for different reasons, making Evil Ninja, resurrecting the Grundle, the Pirate, and then also going back in time, where of course the Ninja used a second set of golden weapons to actually destroy the Mega Weapon. The thing is, they come back to present time and Lloyd has absolutely no recollection of the Mega Weapon in of itself, and doesn't remember it for the remainder of the series, and the thing is that the effects of the Mega Weapon still remained. So it leads to the idea of, how does Lloyd just forget the Mega Weapon? And how does he just not understand that the Mega Weapon actually came to be? And a lot of people have just rounded down to just, it was just magic. But the thing is that there's other remarks about the Mega Weapon that doesn't really make sense because of it. We get told that the only people who get to remember the Mega Weapon and its implications were the people who were actually back in time in of itself. So the 4 Ninja, Garmadon, and that's kind of just it. But the thing is that people do also remember the Mega Weapon. In the exact same scene in Season 3, we hear the Mega Weapon get mentioned, and we get to see all the ninja acknowledge it, Garmadon acknowledges it, Lloyd then remarks that he doesn't remember the weapon in of itself, which is weird. But Nia remembers the Mega Weapon because she nods along. And the other thing is that the literal episode after Wrong Place, Wrong Time, Scales also mentions the mega weapon. And he definitely wasn't there. So how is it that Lloyd seems to be the only person who doesn't remember the mega weapon? Now here is where my explanation comes in, and honestly I do think there is a case of validity to it, because Lloyd does seem to be the only one that doesn't remember the mega weapon, and the implication is that everyone who wasn't involved doesn't remember it because of it. But the thing is that the only person we actually have for that reference piece is Lloyd himself. Because of course we have now got implication that Nia remembers the weapon, that Scales remembered the weapon, that all these other characters did remember. Lloyd seems to be the only unique factor when it comes to the remembrance of the weapon. And what if it's because the weapon was directly affecting him? What if the fact that in the same episode where the mega weapon was destroyed, the whole thing that was happening was whether or not Lloyd was going to become the Green Ninja? We see throughout the episode that there is an image of the ninja with Lloyd, and Lloyd keeps disappearing and reappearing, and we get to see Rue react accordingly. So the mega weapon was directly affecting the memory and the journey of Lloyd. So what if there was further implications because of it? Because we know that the magic and the creation ability of the mega weapon remained. So what if the fact that the mega weapon was constantly flipping between Lloyd was remembered, Lloyd was not remembered, what if that actually altered the memory of Lloyd himself? Because he was the direct consequence of the mega weapon's use. So what if the mega weapon getting destroyed while also affecting Lloyd had a further implication on the memory of Lloyd? And this is honestly the only way you could really explain why Lloyd specifically seems to be the only person who doesn't remember the mega weapon. Because, like I said, the implication is that everyone doesn't remember, because Lloyd is the one that doesn't remember himself. Because what if the implication is that it was just Lloyd, and we just didn't realize? And that would explain how things were able to remain as they were, how Scales was able to remember, how Nia was able to remember, while also keeping the factor that Lloyd doesn't. The mega weapon itself did tamper with Lloyd's memory, and that is how we realize he doesn't know. But again, what do you think of this one? Is this something that you could believe? Is this something that you like or don't like? Because I do think it kind of explains away the biggest issue when it comes to the mega weapon. And honestly, I really like this explanation. Theory 4 and Theory 5 are kind of one of two of the biggest things that have ever come from Ninjago, or the plot holes of Ninjago, so I think it's finally time for me to tackle them, because I do have an actual explanation for them now. But plot hole 4 is the existence, or the non-existence more specifically, of the elemental dragons. Of course, they are unlocked in Season 4, and we get to see them through until Season 7, where then in Season 8, they are no longer able to actually use them. And this has been the center for so much debate over the course of the years. Why can't the ninja use the elemental dragons anymore? And I do think there is a subtle implication as to why. Now, we know for a fact that, of course, the dragons can only be used when the person is not afraid. And of course, Season 4 tackles the ninja being afraid, and we get to see 5, 6, and 7 seasons also with the ninja presumably not being afraid. But something has to change after the point of Season 7. Now, I do think, initially speaking, the ninja were no longer able to use their dragons because they did in fact lose Wu. I do think they became re-afraid because they did in fact lose their master. But of course, they get Wu back eventually. So how do you explain it from then onwards? And I do think it's not actually a plot hole, it's just simply the fact that the ninja rediscovered more fears that they actually had, deep down. And the thing is that we actually get to see the ninja realize their fears in real time. I'm going to use the most definitive examples of the ninja's fears because these are the ones we have outright seen in the show, but the fact is that every single ninja in some way, shape or form does unlock more fears. So let me show you the definitive ones that we actually did get. Of course, we get to see Lloyd's, which is his fear that he is going to become his father, and in my opinion, that fear does get unlocked in Season 8 because we realize that they were trying to bring Garmadon back. The whole thing of Garmadon was returning, Garmadon did return, and Lloyd's fear that he was going to become his father does begin in Season 8, so it makes sense that after the point of Season 7 or the loss of Wu, he would no longer be able to use that dragon. Zane's fear of just being a mindless robot, nothing more, nothing less, he doesn't have any sort of emotion, also does get unlocked after the point of those seasons, because Zane more and more does just get acknowledged as the robot of the team, the one that doesn't really have much emotion. I mean, season 12 is a big factor in that as well. I mean, there is a lot of moments where Zane doesn't really get treated as if he is human, so it would make sense that Zane would actually be able to unlock that fear as well. And I do think, to an extent, him having that holographic technology after the point of season 8 is also a reaction of that fear, because he is now masquerading his androidness to actually be more human-like. I do think that stems from a fear. Nia's fear was being normal. Nia's fear was no longer being a ninja, just not having her elemental ability. And again, I do think to an extent that was unlocked around the point of season 8. Because while we don't get to see the outright scene where it begins, in the scene where they meet Harumi and she initially refers to her as just the girl, we see her being visibly annoyed, almost as if it's something that has already been bothering her. There are even more examples than just these ones. These are the ones that we get in season 11. I mean, Dragon's Rising. Nia's fear is that Jay would forget her, which of course comes to life. Lloyd's fear is failure. We get to see Kai's fear, and hopefully it gets expanded on because of the new Legends series. All the ninja does have fear throughout the course of the actual show itself, and I do think it's purposely acknowledged that the ninja do have fear, because simply put, if they didn't have it, where are the dragons? And I do think that explains why the dragons simply aren't present. We get to see that fears are established, and we get to see that the ninjas' fears are very much there. And I do think that establishes the fact that they can't in fact use the elemental dragons. So I think that's the way to explain it. I truly do not believe it's actually a plot hole. I just think, simply put, the ninja had a bit of a reality check after the point of season 7, and from that point, they were no longer able to use the dragons. But again, what do you think? And the last one, of course, comes from Jitsu. Now, of course, I'm going to get ahead of this immediately. Way of the Departed does exist. And the thing is that some people simply don't consider Way of the Departed canon. So, I'm going to provide an explanation that builds on Way of the Departed, and also gives canon examples. In season 5, the ninja do learn Jitsu, and they use it till the point of season 7, and a brief cameo in season 12. Now the thing is that cameo confirms that Jitsu does in fact exist, it simply is not used. So why do the ninja no longer use it when there are plenty of instances where it definitely would have been useful? Now, Way of the Departed does establish the fact that, of course, Jitsu in of itself does call on a dark Edo magic, which in of itself is a very dark form of magic, which is not really something that the ninja were okay with. So because of it, they do actually stop using Jitsu because of it. Now, this is also now kind of considered not canon to a lot of people, but I do think there's a way to consider it canon. Now, if we take the idea that it draws on a dark form of magic, we could reapply that to the character of Yang, who actually does create it. Would that be something that Yang would actually do within the confines of the series? Yes, 100%. It is something that Yang would definitely have no hesitation doing whatsoever, and there is reasoning behind this, and that is the fact that he uses the Ying Blade. The Ying Blade in of itself is a very dark form of magic in an actual blade itself. It is a mystical tool that literally cuts a rift of return. It is something that calls also on dark magic. Now, we know for a fact that Yang establishes the Ying Blade after the fact, but there is no way to imply that he doesn't actually use dark magic before this point. And in my opinion, it makes complete sense that anything that Yang does, who is ultimately just after immortality, why wouldn't he use dark magic because of it? Why wouldn't he use a technique that is considered dark without the ninja actually realizing it? Because like I said, Yang is certainly no stranger to actually using dark magic, aka the use of the Ying Blade. He has no objection to darker forms of technique. So how do we not know that he didn't use the exact same thing for Jitsu? Because honestly, that's kind of just where it lies, Obviously, at the end of the day, it is still a plot hole because it's never outright said itself. But the fact is that Jitsu is no longer used. And if we do have a passive explanation as to dark magic, the thing is that if we can apply it to the show itself, why shouldn't we consider that explanation canon? And like I said, considering the past of Yang, considering his uses of dark magic, it makes complete sense that Jitsu would derive from the exact same source. But those are the 5 plot holes, and those are also my explanations as to how they can be explained away. What do you think of these explanations? Do you like them? Do you not? I personally think every single explanation that we have in this video is actually really good to actually, consider when it comes to them. But like I said, let me know what you think, and let me know if you do have an alternative explanation for any of them. But that is about it for today, you guys. Thank you for watching, and again, I really do enjoy this plot hole kind of style video. So if you do have any more, please let me know, because I will certainly make another one if you guys want me to. But that is about it for today, you guys. Thank you for watching. Take care. Okay,